Welcome to The Explainer. You know, when we look back at the First World War, it is incredibly easy, isn't it, to just get completely lost in the sheer scale of the whole thing. We're talking millions mobilized, the massive, sweeping movements of entire armies, and those endless strategic stalemates. But today, we're doing something a bit different. We are going to use direct, primary sources, diaries, and historical records to look right into the eyes of the people who actually stood in the mud of those trenches. We're going to completely strip away those grand, sweeping narratives and really focus on the human faces behind the history.
So let's kick things off by digging into one of the most famous stories of the whole war and ask what was actually happening on the front lines that morning. We all know the legend, right? The famous Christmas Truce of 1914. Popular imagination paints this really heartwarming picture of bitter enemies laying down their rifles, stepping out into a snowy no-man's land, swapping gifts, maybe kicking a football around. But when we actually dig into the historical sources, we find out that for a lot of soldiers in specific sectors, this day was literally anything but a festive celebration. If you read the war diary of the two Scots Guards for Christmas Eve, it noted that, quote, "The trenches opposite were lit up with lanterns, and there were sounds of singing." And honestly, the diary does go on to mention that on Christmas morning, parties of Germans and British troops met at the barbed wire, exchanged souvenirs, and the British even handed over some plum puddings. So it sounds perfectly in line with the myth, doesn't it? Well, hold on, because the true story of that day for the two Scots Guards is actually much darker and incredibly sobering.
Section 1. A different Christmas truce, the harsh reality of December 1914.
To really grasp what was going on, we need to rewind the clock exactly 1 week from Christmas. On the evening of December 18th, near Fleury in France, the two Scots Guards launched an attack on German trenches at Rougebanks, and it was absolute chaos. The signal whistles couldn't even be heard over the deafening gunfire. By the early morning of December 19th, it was clear the attack had totally failed, and the forces had to pull back. And this rapid, devastating sequence of events culminated in a Christmas morning where the temporary peace wasn't negotiated for a friendly football match, but rather to spend the holiday recovering the bodies of their friends from no man's land.
The human cost of that single, localized attack was horrifying. The crossfire from well-placed German machine guns resulted in a staggering casualty rate of nearly 50% for the involved units. 50%. That's about 180 men killed or wounded in just a matter of hours. And the really grim part, the bodies of those fallen men had just been lying out there between the lines for an entire week.
So, here's the reality check. That fraternization wasn't some festive break, it was a heartbreaking necessity. Further down the line from the guy swapping plum puddings, the Germans actually brought British bodies out to a halfway line. Detachments of both British and German soldiers formed up in a line together. A German and an English chaplain literally took turns reading prayers alternately over the dead. The diary describes this as being done in great solemnity and reverence. Just take a second and imagine the profound emotional whiplash of burying the very friends you were joking around with a week prior and doing it standing shoulder to shoulder with the men who shot them.
Section 2. The price of courage. Honoring the individuals.
Let's actually put some faces to those devastating casualty numbers. Because these weren't just statistics on a page. These were real people caught in the terrifying chaos of combat. Look at Captain Hugh Taylor. When he was mortally wounded in the charge, 2 men went back to fetch him. His response? He shouted, "Go on, leave me, I am all right, look after yourselves." He was never seen alive by his men again. Then you've got Private James Mackenzie, who won the Victoria Cross for rescuing a severely wounded man under heavy fire, only to be killed by a sniper later that exact same day while trying to perform another rescue. And Lance Corporal Jesse Stead, who earned the Distinguished Conduct Medal for dragging 2 wounded men to safety. He was killed that day too. He was just 18 years old. Actual teenagers sacrificing themselves for their buddies.
Section 3. A Brother's War Diary. The Emotional Toll of the Trenches.
Now, I want to introduce you to Archie Barwick. Archie was just a 24-year-old farm worker from Tasmania when he enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force back in August 1914. And this guy served everywhere: Gallipoli, France, Belgium. He was actually wounded 3 different times. But perhaps his most incredible legacy is his writing. Across 16 individual diary volumes, he provided a matter-of-fact yet incredibly intimate account of the war. Get this. Over the course of the conflict, Archie filled a staggering 4,000 pages with his experiences. 4,000 pages. He documented the absolute horrors of battle, sure, but he also wrote about his friendships, the daily grind, his attempts to keep a sense of humor in the face of total despair. And, vitally, he documented the service of his 2 younger brothers, Len and Stan, who were also out there fighting.
Fast forward to October 1917.
During the Third Battle of Ypres, which most of us know as Passchendaele, Archie's brother Stan was killed in action. Archie actually went to visit Stan's battalion because he had this creeping dread that something was wrong. When they broke the news to him, he wrote this in his diary. "The world seemed to stand still for a few secs, and I nearly fell. Heaven only knows how they will take it all home. Poor Stan could be ill-spared. Of the three of us, I reckon he was the best." I mean, wow, that devastating diary entry just isolates the raw, blinding grief he felt. It cuts right through a century of history to show us the exact moment a family is broken forever.
Section 4. Diverse Voices of War. The Unseen Faces of the Western Front.
You know, we have to remember that these armies weren't just monoliths. They were remarkably diverse. Take Arthur Roberts, for example. He was a Black Briton whose father was a ship's steward from Trinidad. Arthur grew up in Glasgow, worked as an engineering apprentice building ships, played the bugle, and then he volunteered in 1917, arriving just in time to face the utter nightmare of Passchendaele. Or consider Hardat Singh Malik. He became the very first Indian pilot of the First World War, famously known as the Flying Sikh. Men like Roberts and Malik prove without a doubt that this was a truly global conflict, drawing people from vastly different backgrounds into the exact same muddy, harrowing reality.
And honestly, the only reason we even know these deeply personal details today is because of the meticulous preservation of primary sources. We're talking pension records, thousands upon thousands of diary pages like Archie Barwick's, and personal memoirs. These documents give us a completely unfiltered view of the human element. They cut right through the wartime propaganda, and they cut through the sterilized historical summaries we usually read today. They bring such articulate insight, not just to the pure terror of going over the top, but to the mundane, everyday reality of life as a soldier, just trying to survive the day.
So to wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. How do these first-hand accounts and personal tragedies change your understanding of the Great War? Seriously, think about it. When we stop looking at casualty figures as just numbers on a page, and we start seeing them as 18-year-olds dragging their friends to safety, or brothers writing tear-stained diary entries thousands of miles from home, it permanently alters how we remember history, doesn't it? It absolutely demands that we remember the individuals. Thanks for tuning in, and keep questioning the narrative.